Do you think intuition is grossly misunderstood and underrated?
I think it's misunderstood because I think that we have so much noise around us. I believe, Gary, like every person listening, whether they're 12 years old or 112 years old, I think we all have intuition, like a knowing inside of us. And I think our knowing's always right. I think our knowing is more.
I'm sorry, finish.
No, I was gonna say, I think our knowing is more powerful even than anyone else's advice. But I think that we have so much noise around us, from other people's opinions to our own
100%.
self-doubt, right? That it gets so loud, we start to not even be able to hear our own intuition anymore. So most people haven't even heard their own intuition in a long time, or they don't know how.
I would tell you that I couldn't applaud that POV more. It is my belief that my happiness, which matters to me the most, and then comma, my success, which I have pride in my professional life, is 100% predicated on my inability to compromise my intuition. I believe intuition is uncomfortably misunderstood. I believe that A students and very narrow, kind of rigid thinkers, which most people are, have demonized intuition. I think intuition is looked upon as careless and is positioned as silly or flaky or whatever else you want to call it. And I will tell you that it is basically something that I've started exploring with myself, and I believe it is a category of information that I will talk a lot more about, because basically everything good that I've decided that has gone on to be very, very good has been far more based on intuition than anything else.
I have the exact same experiences. Like how I broke through this crazy crowded beauty space and built something that ended up passing all of the companies I used to save my tip money as a Denny's waitress to buy in department stores, was literally figuring out how to hear my own intuition and then trust it. That's the other part of it, right? And like, I love that you're talking about this. And by the way, for so many people, that's how they hear God or their faith, whatever faith they practice, right?
Correct.
Or even the universe, they hear it through their own intuition. And I think it's your superpower. That's what I think. I think that it's literally the one thing that changes everything. That if I were an entrepreneur or even just someone that wanted to go after a dream, that's the biggest thing I would focus on, is how do I tune into and hear my own gut, and how do I differentiate that from all the noise around me or other people's opinions?
What is your intuition? Funny. I do say that a lot, I just realized. What is your intuition on the other ingredient needed for this to actually work, which is the ability to be comfortable with failure? Because I'll tell you, the reason I'm in love with my intuition is a couple of reasons. One, humility. My intuition has been the driver of so much success. It has also led to many failures. It is my capacity to be comfortable in my micro failure that has allowed me to continuously trust my intuition. Thoughts?
Yeah, thoughts are, okay, I'm going to say something you might freak out over or disagree with.
I'm really excited.
I think every time your intuition leads you to a failure, I don't think it's a failure. I think it's part of your destiny, and you're destined in your serendipitous journey where you had to build that muscle in order to carry the weight of your success.
So can I stop you? Because I don't think that's crazy at all. It makes me want to ask you something else. Do you believe that your optimism in your blood and soul is also a required ingredient to make what we're talking about here work? Because what I'm thinking about is the people on the other side, right? And now they're listening to two successful people talking about intuition, and they're basically saying, fuck these two. Like, okay, good, but like, you guys got lucky. And I know a million people that have quote unquote got lucky in different levels of success financially, but have happiness of their journey. But it is ingredients. It's a concoction. It is not a straight, like, it's kind of like diseases, right? It's never like, oh, pepper. No, it's like, for example, with COVID, I hear like it's this thing and then the zinc can get in. It's mixtures, right? HIV, right? It was a cocktail. I'm listening carefully to you. We went intuition. Now what I want to know, then we went with capacity to be comfortable with failure, AKA humility. Now I'm asking you because your answer is like, no, Gary, let me send you a different way. And I'm with you on this. I do them as micro failures, but to your point, life is so serendipitous, you just don't know, but I'm fascinated by the next statement, which looks like this. Do you believe that your optimism allows this all to work? Because if you are looking at losses as in, well, this was meant to be part of my journey and this scar is actually attractive, because that's how I think about it. I think about all those losses as scars and like that scar giving you character and that's attractive. Do you believe that optimism was an incredibly big factor and ingredient in your success?
I think optimism is great. I think though that knowing why we're doing what we're doing, listening to our gut and going after our calling, like literally living our calling, I think that's the victory.
Hold on though.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Every human needs levels of affirmation along the way to sustain that. Right?
Yeah.
And so in the beginning where you're not seeing those results, for many, and you might have, I've always seen results pretty quickly in my good calls. So I always try to think about someone who's not seeing it. So because they don't have optimism, they have delusion and they think they're going to be, Beyonce when they can't sing, right? Do you feel like believing in your calling gets affirmed along the way? What do you rely on in that beginning? Don't you think blind faith is actually completely grounded in optimism?
I mean, for me, my faith is a huge part of my life.
I'm going to take religion as faith out. I'm saying I'm just thinking about you, young you in this moment, and I'm really fascinated by it. I'm meant to do this because what you're talking about is what I love, which is the journey.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into your. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think the victory is the outcome, right? I don't think the victory. Listen, I know how accomplished you are and everything. I know you're going to have the New York Jets one day. I know all that. But I don't think that's the victory. I think the victory is the journey of actually like stepping into all of who you are and not talking yourself out of your own truth. And what I mean by that is this journey that we're talking about, right? Of course, optimism, of course, resiliency to get back up every time you're knocked down, of course, all those things. But I think that so many people listening right now, if they don't ever learn to get still and hear their own truth and hear their own intuition, I think what's going to happen, and this is what happens to most people, is they end up staying in their comfort zone. They end up putting their own immediate failures on a pedestal or other people's opinions or self-doubt. They end up talking themselves out of their own truth. And then they end up never actually becoming the person they're born to be. So for me, I don't think like the fact that I was able to build $1 billion company is the victory. I think the moments of me knowing this is what I'm supposed to do and trusting it, even when it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you one example, okay, of this. So, and maybe this will make sense because optimism, of course, is important. And I know what you're saying. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself. I really believe that. There was a moment.
How do you define that as a term? Because I view that as self-belief and confidence and optimism. I think that you're such a, very quickly I'm like, oh, this is my sister. Like literally within the first 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, I see. So I'm trying to do, and I apologize because I'm hoping a different voice might do this for the listener. I'm trying to figure out what words you use to quantify. Yeah. I fully agree with you, everything you're saying. I'm wondering if you view optimism as, so I think optimism, similar to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes gets pegged as delusion.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about, you see where I'm going? Because I could almost feel you doing that right now. And I'm like, I get you, sister. Because like this is why it's so great. Wordsmithing matters, right? Like for example, hustle has gotten demonized as like burnout. So I no longer use it because I don't need it. You know what I'm going to call it? Work ethic. Call it what you want. Here's what I can tell you. For all the belief you had and all the love you had in doing what you were doing, I'm pretty confident based on your outcome that there was a lot of work ethic there. And so whatever you want to call it, and sometimes I just think about, I know the word hustle triggers people. So I use the word work ethic now because I don't want to ever not let anybody who cares to listen to me not realize that if you don't put in the work, it is impossible. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just had a big aha moment that what you're saying is optimism. I a billion% agree with. And I'm thinking of that right now as belief.
Right.
Same
I
thing.
love that.
Yep. And now I'm right there with you. Like, here's the thing and then I want to share one quick story with you too,
Please.
that hopefully someone listening right now maybe needs to hear. But I mean, when I look back, it's like when people are like, oh, how did you start with close to nothing and build $1 billion company? It's like, yeah, I got back up every time I got knocked down, and I followed my gut and I worked really, really hard. But I do think that one of the most important things I did was just like how to build $1 billion company from nothing. Like, I think one of the most important things is making that decision to believe that you can.
Yes.
And for me, that's optimism, exactly what you're saying. And I guess I call it belief. So yeah, 1,000,000% with that. And one more thing, just on maybe people listening to us right now that are like, oh, Gary, like Jamie, I trust my gut sometimes and it's wrong, or I tried it once and it didn't work, or I don't know how to hear my own intuition. I just want to say, I think that it is a muscle that we can all build. And I think people have to give themselves grace, right? It reminds me of like when you start to meditate, a lot of people try it and they can't do it. They're like, they go through their to-do list in their head the whole time they're trying to meditate, but you have to like give yourself grace and start. And what I would say, whether it's entrepreneurs or someone who's 14 years old and out there dating right now, I would say when you start to look back at your experiences and think about moments when you had a gut feeling and you didn't follow it. Like, we've all dated like a sketchy guy or or had a, and like, you're like, his phone didn't really just like shut off for 3 days, or he didn't lose the phone. He went
Right.
like, and then you kind of make that decision of like, okay.
Talk to me about, I mean, we are really vibing here. I actually want to talk to you offline because I just have had the thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm so excited.
Right.
Insecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, to me, like thinking to my friends that were girls that were dating guys that I knew what the guys were doing, which was they were preying on my friends' insecurities, and sometimes brilliant, beautiful girls. And I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
This woman, you really triggered something in me. This woman, I'm thinking about 4 or 5 friends through the last 20 years. This woman is subjectively, and if we had 100 people ask, is 1,000,000 miles better than this man. This man has figured out the cheat code that if he makes her feel insecure, he has the leverage. Thoughts?
Yep. I think that happens every single day. And I think that we look for people that treat us how we believe we deserve to be treated. Like we find partners that meet us.
So you go with, cool, before you worry about jerk off Johnny, this is a big game of your own lack of self-love towards you.
It's your own lack of self-love, because here's the thing, and I don't know your friends, so I'll just say this. I'll make a general statement.
You'll appreciate this. This was mainly 17 to 25 years old, because you see that so commonly there. I mean, in later stages, people are in really deep relationships and you're in different parts of your life. When you're going through high school and college, you're spending so much time with people, you get better reads to the cleanness of the data is like, oh, this is really fucked up. When you're older, you're running in different circles, you don't really get to see it as easily.
Right. And I think that whether, no matter your age, this is what I believe. I think that when someone's treating us like crap and we stay with them, I think it's because we deep down inside don't believe we deserve better yet. And here's the thing, for people like that are dating your friend who's totally screwing them over, right? If you were to bring the best, most amazing, beautifully like kind person into their space, that same girl would probably put them in the friend zone.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because they don't yet deep down inside believe. Yeah, they deserve more.
And also people value different things through their life. One of the things, right now we live through a generation desperately interested in blaming social media for lack of accountability. They're just pointing fingers, right? Like if you are in a good place with yourself and your perspective is strong around gratitude, an anonymous person's negative comment is not going to ruin your day.
Yeah. And I think when it does, I think that's what's so tough, right? That's when it's a reminder to ourselves, like, oh yeah, we have some more work to do. One of the things I talk about in my book, Believe It, is just that ability to learn to turn down the volume on certain things and turn up the volume on other things. Like one example, we were 3 years into building the company, right? I was hearing no from everyone, Gary, like from all the retailers I dreamed of carrying our products that I used to shop in, right? I would save my tip money, like I mentioned, as a Denny's waitress, and buy products in the department stores or in Sephora.
And Jay, what year was this?
So we launched 2007. Like I quit my job 2007. I wrote the business plan on my honeymoon flight to South Africa with my husband. Not the most romantic way to kick off a marriage. And we both got back, quit our jobs, dove all in. I thought, Gary, and maybe so many entrepreneurs listening, I thought, oh, if I just pour everything I have and actually create a product that works, like it's just going to sell. If it's that good, it's just going to sell. And then I didn't realize it would be the hard. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs in my life, but being an entrepreneur is by far.
Well, you especially also built that brand different than building a brand today where you can use Shopify and social media to build it. You had to get a yes from Sephora, Ulta, Walmart, Walgreens, and Macy, whoever it was. And that is difficult when you're innovating the way you did. Do you know that my whole life is no? Do you know VaynerMedia? A lot of people listening don't know this. Most brands don't want to say yes to VaynerMedia. We don't want to do a commercial and then go to sleep. Like we don't want to take 12 weeks to do the perfect commercial and then do print ads that look like it or banner ads or digital programmatic. My whole life building VaynerMedia is no. Everything I do is Gary V's easy. I just do it with the audience. But VaynerMedia is exactly, I know what you're living through because when you innovate and you're doing something different and you don't look the part, you didn't work at Procter & Gamble for 13 years.
Yeah.
Or like, what's this Washington State thing? Like you know what it is.
Well, and it's wild because I would go in and start, I would pitch the product and, we were staying alive on social media. So we were getting, people were writing just blogs at that point, and we were selling like 1 to 3 orders a day on our website, and people were spreading the word. That was the only way we barely stayed alive. But all the retailers, exactly what you said. And by the way, I've learned this, like when you're doing something that's authentic or that is different, but even if it's just authentic to you, even in a crowded industry, by definition, it's novel. By definition, it's never been done before. And I really believe, looking back now at this journey and everything, I believe that like even a lot of visionaries, touted visionaries, I think they can't imagine anything being successful unless subconsciously they have proof in the back that they've already seen it and it's already worked. So it's like, of course, so many people are going to say no to your dream or doubt your dream if they've never seen it done before. And we had 3 years of every single beauty retailer saying, no, you're not the right fit. It's not going to work. You're not right for our customers. And and by the way, we talk about gut feeling. I kept having this gut feeling we're supposed to go on QVC because then I could actually show my bright red rosacea and prove live that our product works, unlike the photoshopped ads on TV. And this is just something to share for someone who might need to hear this right now, who's having a gut feeling, but they feel like they're wrong. Like I kept having this feeling. And every time I would do a meeting with QVC, it would be a no. Every phone call I'd finally get, like I got their head guy, Alan Burke, on the phone. He's like a legend. He's responsible for building this $1 billion beauty empire on QVC. And I finally got him on a call, and I thought for sure it was going to be a yes. And because if he's taking his precious time, and it was about a minute into the call, and he said, I just need to let you know, we've reviewed your product with all the buyers. It's unanimous. It's a no. You're not the right fit for QVC. And of course, I poured my heart out. I'm like, oh, but I am the right fit. And then we were down to under $1,000 in our bank account at that point. So I remember crying myself to sleep. And long story short, a year later, when I finally did get a yes to go on QVC, I took this big risk that I was advised not to by consultants. And I put real women of all shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges. And I showed my own bare face and all the things that had never been done before. We sold out at the 10-minute mark. I was crying on national television because it's live. QVC is live to 100 million homes.
You knew the truth, and your heart would win, not, students telling you what to do.
Yeah, and listen, it was a big risk, but I feel like I know this lesson that I know this, and now I've seen it play out with thousands of entrepreneurs over the years, but I know that authenticity alone doesn't guarantee success, but inauthenticity guarantees failure.
Love that.
Right?
Love that. Listen,
Always.
I mean, you are preaching. I'd rather die. I'd rather die than compromise my gut.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel good enough. Like if you're going to lose on your own sword.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing in the world to do is to lose based on somebody else's advice. I really believe that.
Yes. And you know what else to that? Don't even necessarily think because you're losing right now that you've lost. And what I mean by that is,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I was going to say, Gary, so this is wild, right? So Alan Burke, the guy I just mentioned, after we finally got on to QVC, so he's the guy that said, no, I cried myself to sleep.
Yeah.
After we got onto QVC, that one airing turned into 5 that year, 101 the next year. And then I did over 250 live shows a year for 8 years in a row. And we built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. So it is right now at this moment that you and I are talking. And when Alan Burke retired, and by the way, he ended up becoming one of my greatest mentors after we launched on QVC. He's so brilliant, to be honest. And after he retired, we actually hired him in a paid position on our advisory board at Cosmetics. So the guy who rejected me is now working for me.
I love that. First of all, that's amazing. I need a much more interesting one. At his retirement dinner, did he publicly say that you were his biggest miss? And then later...
So here's the funny thing. He would say that, and he has said that, but here's what I know. I know that had he said yes sooner, I know that I didn't know what I didn't know. Had he said yes sooner, we would have failed.
You think so?
I do, because what I learned later.
As somebody who's so intuitive, why do you not believe that a year earlier you would have gone with your gut?
I would have, but at the time, and maybe this was just serendipitous grace, but at the time, what I learned later was the QVC is massive, right? Like the one airing I got, I had to sell 6,000 units in 10 minutes to hit the sales goal or not come back. What I learned later was like, had he said yes any sooner, we were not operationally sophisticated enough to handle an account that size on the back end. So maybe that was just serendipitous grace.
I see. You might have sold them up front, but logistically you were not prepared.
Right. Yeah. And so I feel like that was divine timing in that case. And one other thing to share too, and by the way, I knew in my gut we were supposed to be on QVC, but for 3 years they said no, right? And then we ended up building the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I just want to share that because I know there's people listening right now that think like, oh, I'm listening to my gut. I feel strongly, but I have no proof around me that my business is succeeding or that I'm not getting the traction I want.
I would love to hear just a little bit of the story between nobody believes me, everybody hates my brand, and $1.9 billion to L'Oreal. Like something in there happened. Something went right. Can you kind of talk about how and when you finally caught traction and what that little season was like?
So we, no after no after no after no after no. And I had entered us in this big beauty competition. It's like this, it's called CEW Beauty Awards, and it's in New York City. And it was, there's 6. So imagine this huge, exhibition center.
Sure.
And there were 6,000 women walking the floor that are part of this organization, and all the beauty companies from around the world are all there. And it's once a year, and you get a 3-foot booth, right? And all the big products that launch all year long, all these companies enter their product in an award. The hope of being there is that all the 6,000 women walking the floors vote your product to win one of the awards. In my case, that would have meant like, oh, maybe some of the stores will take me in, or maybe I'll get press. And so we're down to like literally almost no money left. And I had entered this competition a while back, entered this annual thing. So I'm there, I'm at my 3-foot table. You're not allowed to leave your 3-foot table, and you're supposed to just demonstrate your product over and over and over for all of the people walking by. So I'm there, and all of a sudden I see QVC has this giant booth there in person. I had never met anyone in person, right? And they've been telling me no for 3 years. Alan Burke says you're not the right fit, all that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I can just sneak away and meet someone, maybe that will help, right? And I'm sitting there kind of disassociating myself from what's actually happening. So all these women are walking by and I'm like talking about the product and I'm not paying attention. I'm really just focused on how can I get to that QVC booth without getting kicked out, because you're not allowed to.
Sure.
So I'm like praying for the right words. I'm praying for the right timing. I keep trying to sneak away, and then the buyers are mobbed over there. So then I go back to my booth, and eventually I get over there. I talked to a buyer at QVC. She knew who I was based on not me, but the company name, because she'd gotten a million samples over the years. And I was like, I think your customers would love our, I just pour my heart out to her.
Yeah.
She gave me her card and said, let's set up a meeting sometime. And I thanked her. I went back to my booth. Now, in that moment, I thought, does she really mean it?
Yeah.
Is this just a courtesy? Like, here's my card.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm back there now at my booth, continuing demonstrating the product over and over. It was our concealer by Under Eye. And I'm demonstrating it over and over and over, and still not paying attention, really not present, because I'm now replaying everything I wish I would have just said and all that.
Sure.
All of a sudden, a woman comes up to me. And she introduces herself and she says, hello, my name is Miss Lisa Mason. I'm a QVC show host. She'd been a show host for 17 years. I didn't realize that earlier in the night, she'd come up to me and I was demonstrating the product with her. I didn't recognize her, and because I was not paying attention. And I was like, oh, and she goes, I just want to tell you, I think our QVC customers will love your product.
Wow.
And I looked at her and tears started streaming down my face. I think I freaked her out because she didn't know what I knew, which is like,
totally
a lot of business. Everyone has said no.
Of course.
And I think I scared her, and she's like, oh, sugar. I don't have any say over if the product goes. She goes, but I want to let
it's
you
not
know.
a contract.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. She goes, but I want to let you know, I love your product. And I went up to our head buyer over there and I told her she needs to give you a chance. And I was like, thank you.
Totally.
I freaked her out. So long story short, we had a meeting with the buying team, and QVC's over in Pennsylvania. So I flew out for that. We got a yes. But here's what it meant. And this part of the story, by the way, probably the biggest life lesson, business lesson I learned in the whole journey. We got a yes. And what it meant was we got one shot to go on QVC Live in this 10-minute segment. And we either had to hit their sales goal or not come back. And here's the context, right? We're doing, 2 to 3 orders a day on our website.
Yeah.
I learned that to hit their sales goal in that 10-minute window, we have to sell over 6,000 units of our product. Over 6,000 units, and then I learned that the offer is a consignment offer. So what that meant was I wasn't going to get paid for the product yet. I had to figure out how to pay for, manufacture, ship in over 6,000 units of our concealer. And then if it didn't sell, I would have to take it all back and pay for it, right? So normally, you would never want to say yes to that. Like there's that saying in business, never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose, and cannot afford to lose it. But we also, at this point, it was hundreds of no's. And it was like, okay, well, we can do it this way and go bankrupt, or we're probably going to go out of business anyway. It was that moment. Yeah. So we decided to say yes. Then we had to figure out how to pay for the inventory. So it was over 20 banks said no for an SBA loan. This tiny bank in California gave us an SBA loan just for the amount to cover just the inventory for that one QVC purchase order. So everything was on the line, is my point. Yeah. And we met with third-party consultants. And this is where one of the biggest, I think, and most difficult decisions I've ever faced happened. We met with consultants that said to us, and they help so many people sell their product on QVC or in stores, and they help a lot of people, and they're amazing, and they give you the best advice they know. And they said to me, okay, if you want a shot at doing well, here's what you need to do. You need to produce your segment this way and use this type of model, which was all flawless skin.
Of course.
I'm like, okay, like, here's my thought. I go, what if I go on and I have real women, like, what if I put a model in her 70s and all different shapes, ages, skin tones, and skin problems? I go, what if I take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea? And they're mortified at this idea. Right. And they're saying like, and we would argue about it. Cause I'd say like, here's the thing. When we talk about intuition, my intuition said like, here's the thing. If I'm sitting at home watching someone show a product and I don't see someone that looks like me,
totally.
How do I know it's going to work for me? Right. And I was like, this doesn't make sense that you have one age and one skin tone and flawless skin. This doesn't, but they were giving me the best advice they knew. They wanted me to win. So I was in this spot, right? Like so many of us get in this spot in life where our gut's telling us one thing and then experts are telling us another. Yeah. And I flew out to QVC a week before this one big shot. And I, got this rental car, and every single day for a week, Jen, I sat in this rental car right out front of the QVC building. It's this huge campus, and I just watched people walk in and out of the front door. And I sat there and prayed and cried and like went through all these scenarios in my head, right? Because I was like, okay, like because there was so much pressure. I knew the next time I walked through those doors, I was going to walk out either bankrupt or with my whole life changed.
Totally. Like no in between.
Yeah. And I just thought like, okay. And there were moments like, I know you can't fake authenticity. I know that. I know viewers are smart. I knew intuitively that the only way to succeed was to fully show up, and with that authentic mission and why I was doing what I was doing. But oftentimes like we know the right thing to do, but it's also the hardest thing to do. And so there were moments in that car where I struggled with doubting my own gut. Like I thought thoughts like, okay, well, if I try it their way and then maybe it works,
sure. Right.
Eventually I'll try it my way. And I just remember this moment in the car where I was like, okay, it was like this big epiphany moment where I was trying to imagine who my customer was and who is going to be watching, because QVC is live television shopping channel, but it's live to 100 million homes. And I had this moment in the car where I was like, I kept imagining, for whatever reason, a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was so busy that she forgot she mattered and forgot she was beautiful. And I was like, I would rather have her turn on if she's going to bless me with 3 seconds of her precious time, I would rather have her turn on the television, see me showing real people that look like her and calling them beautiful and meaning it, even if she bought nothing. Like I'd rather do that than sell a crap load of product and stand for nothing. And so like, I knew what I had to do, and I remember, walking in the door of QVC and I remember walking in the studio. Oh, and by the way, I learned that you're not even guaranteed your 10 minutes. Like if I went live and all of a sudden it's not going well and we're like a minute or two into the presentation, you might see your clock jump from 8 minutes left down to 1 minute left, like that. And I was like, and so it was so much pressure, and I had on double Spanx. I sweat through the double Spanx. I was in this dress,
of course,
mess, because it was just I remember, and they paired me with the host who had come up to me that day at the show.
Yeah.
And so, thank God, because I was a mess. And I remember the camera went on and I was shaking. Like I was trying to do this demonstration on my wrist with
with like you're shaking.
Yeah. My whole wrist was like Scooby-Doo when he sees a ghost, and she like grabbed my hand and she's like, thank you, sugar. And she took over and they pulled my bare face. I'll never forget my bare face, bright red before shot. On national TV. And I remember going to the models. I didn't know how it was going, but I knew I wasn't cut yet.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the models, like all ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges and calling them beautiful and meaning it. And we got down to the last, because remember by this point, there were amazing makeup artist brands that are phenomenal. And then there was a lot of other beauty brands, but no one was going on and just saying like, here's my skin challenges and they're beautiful. And if you want to, have your, products that help you look like yourself, in your natural skin, this works. And like, it was a totally different thing than what had been being done. And I remember we had about a minute left in the presentation, and I heard the host say, like, the tan shade's almost gone, the deep shade's almost sold out. And I was like freaking out. And then right at the 10-minute mark, this giant sold out sign came up across the screen. I start sobbing on national TV, and then they cut from me and go to like Dyson vacuum or something. And my husband came running through the double doors of the QVC studios, and I'm like sobbing, and I'm like, real women have spoken. He's like, we're not going bankrupt. And I was like, ah. And that one airing turned into 5 that year, right? So this is that in between space of hundreds of no's so that one airing turned into 5 that year and 101 the next year. And then we did over, and still do, over 250 live shows a year. And within, I think it was 4 years, we built the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I only share that because it was years of them saying no, and not just no, but you're not the right fit.
A firm no. Like, we've really thought it through. We've all discussed it. It's unanimous. It's a hard no.
It's a hard no.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, you are not the right fit, which really just sounds like someone saying you're not enough over and over and over. Right. And
but then to have such success in the exact same space is so special. I mean, that is so incredible. That is such a great story. That is so then what? Like, you're telling this great story. I'm just like listening, like I'm at story time.
We eventually got a yes from every single place that had said no. And some of them happened shortly after our QVC success. Others, like in the case of Sephora, took a total of 6 years of no's to eventually get a yes. And so then we kept building and building. And, I had this whole dream of trying to shift the definition of beauty in the beauty industry. And so I was like, we've got to go global. And so out of this office that we finally made it out of our living room. We were in a townhouse. And then we made it out of there and got an actual office space. And then we started growing and we grew to over 1,000 employees and started launching international. Like, I couldn't believe my own success for a while. And I thought at any moment it may come crashing down. So I was working 100-hour weeks for years. And I realized, like, I got to the point where I was addicted to work, and we had tried to have kids for a decade, and I was having miscarriages, and all of these things were going on where my husband and I realized, like, when he would call me, I thought it was a work call when I'd see his name on my phone. Like, it was to the point where work was our whole world. And so part of, I think, learning to trust yourself is also learning when to not trust yourself. And we realized, right, that I didn't trust myself to not keep working the way my parents did growing up, frankly. And then I wanted to try and change history for myself personally. And so that was also part of the reason where I'm like, you know what, I think we need to sell the business or partner with someone. We thought about going public, but in that case, you're still running it as well. And it's kind of all on you. And so it was a big, so we started taking, when I had that realization, we started taking meetings with L'Oreal, and then they weren't interested for a long time. It was 3 years of them saying no to a potential partnership. And back to the rejection as God's protection. By the time they did want a partnership, so did a lot of other people. So it was this moment where all of a sudden L'Oreal wanted to buy the company, and so did a lot of others. And so all of a sudden the price was so much higher than what it would have been. And it was kind of like the stars aligned, and so that was 2016. We decided to partner with them, and then I stayed on. They made me their first woman to hold a CEO title in their 100+ year history of any brand.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it was and it was kind of a real cool experience. And everyone there is like in couture, head to toe, and all the right all the right stuff. And in the early years, so in the 3 years they were saying no to us, I would feel like, should I wear cooler clothes to these meetings?
Sure.
But what I realized is, because we stayed true to who we were, like, I never started, like, I was always just maybe odd
who you are
compared to who I am, compared to their culture. But by year 3 of our meetings, part of why, because we stayed authentic to who we were, because we didn't fit in, we were different than the 40 other brands they own. And so because of that, we had created something so valuable. You know what I mean? And I think
absolutely.
You hear your authenticity is your superpower. And in this case, it was in every way, shape, and form. Like, had we ever start changing who we were to listen to all the advice from the stores telling us no, or even some of the advice from L'Oreal over the years and the meetings that ended with no, if we had made those changes that didn't feel authentic to us, we probably never would have been purchased by them for that much. And we probably never would have built a company that lasted.
Do you know what's so funny about that? As you're telling that story, I have such a clear memory because when I was, let's see, honestly, I think I was 22. I might've been 23. I went for the very first time. I don't even know if you know what this is. It's kind of in a bygone era, but there was this huge conference that traveled around, a Christian conference called Women of Faith. I don't know if you ever heard of that or went to it, but it was like an arena conference, like an arena tour. And I'd never heard of it. And well, I'd never heard of it because I think that year was its first or second year. But anyway, it came to the town that I was in. And didn't know the teachers. All the speakers were older. They were all in their like 60s and 70s, and funny and wild and irreverent. Like, I didn't know you were allowed to do that and be a Christian. I hadn't seen that version yet. And I didn't know that women could speak like that. I just never seen anything like it. I'd never seen women in kind of having agency over their own faith and gifts as communicators. That was just news to me. And so anyhow, I remember, so I went that first year to Women of Faith in an arena in Tulsa. And then 2 years later, I went to another arena. And I remember sitting, I was like way up in the nosebleeds, and I'm 24 maybe at that point. And I remember where I was sitting, like to what angle I was facing the stage, when I just had this very clear thought, like, I think that I am going to be on the stage with those women, which was an absurd thing to think, and absolutely absurd. I mean, I was a teacher. I taught 4th grade. I had never even I'd never been in adult work. I worked with 10-year-olds, and then inside marriage, I worked with students. And so at our church, I didn't even know women. Anyhow, it was so clear and it persistent. It just hung on for years. And then, 8 years later, I surprisingly to myself even move into this space as a writer and as a communicator, and then ultimately as a teacher and speaker. And so in 2015, their event, and so I'd seen them back in 1996. So in 2015, the organizers of the event got in touch with me and said, it's the farewell tour. It's the last year of Women of Faith. It had been like 20-year run. And we would love for you to join the tour for its last leg of the race. And I just remember sitting there going, what in the world? I mean, I remember that thought from 20 years earlier that didn't even make sense. It didn't even have a home. I didn't even have a board to Velcro it to. Like, I wasn't even in that world. I didn't even know about it. And so I love listening to your story, and it's giving me such like nostalgia in my own heart for sometimes the ways that if we're still enough and quiet enough, if we'll listen and trust it, there's a knowing that we are given maybe 20 years before we need it. Maybe 20 years before it's even going to ever come to fruition. And yet there it is.
I'm just curious. I'm thinking about you as a Denny's waitress.
Yeah.
What did you believe was possible then? And did you learn to trust your gut then? Like, when did you start learning to trust your intuition, to hear those voices? Because I get impulses too. I get hits of what I'm supposed to do. And I think some people don't get them. So you share a lot of tips in the book, by the way. So we're not gonna be able to share everything on this interview. Read the book. Jamie shares a ton of tips in this book to help you on your journey. If you're a small business, Her advice is incredible. If you're growing your business, if you're a big business, if you're a leader, if you're someone who's an entrepreneur, if you're someone who wants to be more creative, all of the chapters in that book give you nuggets of wisdom and advice and tips to help you on your journey. It's like really is for everyone, just so you know. So you're going to get some tips, but Jamie, in terms of that intuition and gut, tell us about that Denny's waitress that you were and what was possible then to you.
Yeah. So I've always felt, and I've always felt deep down inside like I was destined to serve in a big way or do something that impacted other people on all of our own journey. I always had that inkling, didn't know what it was. And working as a Denny's waitress, this is so funny, working as a Denny's waitress. Oh my gosh. So the Denny, and I was working to try and save up for school and all that, and pay my way through school. And Denny's, it's so funny how so many things teach us lessons, right? So I won't get into this too much, but like the Denny's I worked at, the kitchen was a mess in the sense that they would take an hour to get pancakes out sometimes. So I'm an introvert by nature. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are getting mad and they're leaving because it's taking an hour to get pancakes. And I'm not getting a tip. And I really need a tip because I'm trying to pay through school. And so I learned to talk to people and try to be like, and try to just connect with them and ask about their stories and that whole thing. And it probably planted a seed in me of understanding the importance of operations of a business and the right operational infrastructure. So even as a, in that whole different industry as a Denny's waitress, I really think every single thing we go through in life helps us build that foundation, right? Of where we're going to be. But, in the time I was a Denny's waitress, here's really where my gut started speaking to me. And this is for everybody out there. It's never too late to start learning how to hear your own intuition, right? Most people never do. But just like faith or like anything else, I think it's never too late. I think everyone can start now. And I really think that it's a journey. It's a journey of building on experiences and then looking back and going, oh, I didn't listen to my gut there. I had that instinct and it didn't go so well. Or, oh, I decided to go against everyone else. I trusted my gut and here's what happened, right? And I think for all of us, it's every area of life. I mean, this is something a lot of your community might relate to, is like, or not, but if you've ever dated a sketchy guy or you have a friend where you're just like, I don't think they're telling me the truth. Something's not adding up. We kind of know it, right? Like so many people can hopefully relate to this at some point in their life, but they've dated someone where they're like, I don't really believe him that his phone just broke or that he just like disappeared for a day, right? I don't think and you can choose, we all choose like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it and I'm just going to stay in love. Or, you know what? Like, okay, I'm done. Like we all know. And I feel like we continue building those experiences in life. And then we look back on them and it's like, now I'm able, looking back on so much of this journey, I'm able to really know that some of my biggest mistakes and misjudgments and miscalculations came when I went against that inkling inside, right? And I trusted people that are touted visionaries or experts. And it's good to trust experts and visionaries, except if your deep gut inkling goes against it, because knowing that you stayed to that through line of authenticity for you and what you're called to do is so important. And learning how to tune in and hear that can literally change the whole course of your life. And one big example of that is probably one of the greatest business lessons I've ever learned and life lessons. And it came down to this moment where after 3 years of hearing no's, and by the way, John, at one point, I think it was 2 years into our business, I actually was able to and just to share a scrappy tip for anyone out there, like really building their business who can't afford to hire people, I was like emailing everyone on LinkedIn. I would find anyone that worked at the company. I would just try to get in some way, send them products, ask them to, and I'd finally like hustled my way into a guy named Alan Burke, who was the head of all of beauty at QVC. He had built this multi-billion dollar beauty industry there, a department there. And I got through to his assistant, and I begged her to like have him look at our product and get us meetings and all those things in front of the buyers. And anyways, long story short, I got a call saying he is going to take a call with me and he's reviewed the products. And I thought, oh my gosh, this head of everything, Alan Burke, if he's going to spend his precious time like calling me, it's going to be good. Right. And I was so excited. And I was pacing around waiting for the call in our office, which was our living room. And Paula was there, and I was like, I was freaking out. He called. And right when I answered the phone, obviously I was like, I didn't know what we were going to do, right? We were down to no money. I was freaking out. And I said, okay, to my head, I'm like, they're lucky to have us. He's lucky to get us, like all these things, right? Pumping myself up. And I got on the phone and he said, hello, Jamie, this is Alan Burke from QVC. And I'm like, Alan, it's so great to talk to you and this whole thing. And anyways, he got right to the point and he said, we've reviewed your products with all the buyers here in the beauty department, and it's unanimous that it's a no. We're going to pass on your company. You're not the right fit for QVC and you're not the right fit for our customers, but we wish you well. And I was like, oh, but I am the right fit. And I just tried to pour into another pitch. And he thanked me for loving QVC, but said it's a no, got off the phone. Okay. So then I cried myself to sleep 3 nights in a row. If you've ever had bad news and you like wake up in the morning and you hope it was a dream and you're like, oh, it wasn't, right? It was like that day after day after day. So fast forward another year, we're at a big beauty show and one of the QVC hosts tried our product. There were 6,000 women there. She tried our product and said, you need to be on QVC. She told the buyer, we got one shot. We got our first big yes, but what it meant, and this is one of the greatest life lessons and business lessons I've ever learned as it pertains to trusting your gut and staying authentic to who you are. We got one shot on QVC. And here's what it meant. We got a 10-minute window to go live in front of 100 million homes and sell our product. But what it also meant was, and at the time we were selling only 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? Fulfilling them out of our living room, driving to the post office. So we're only selling 2 to 3 orders a day, barely staying alive. They ordered over 6,000 units of our concealer to sell in just a 10-minute window in order to hit their sales goal or not come back. And it was a consignment deal, which meant we weren't paid for any of it. And whatever sold, we got paid for, but whatever didn't sell would get shipped back to us. So it's like never, as an entrepreneur, never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, we were like out of options. And it just felt like, you know what, let's just go all in. So we said yes. We applied for SBA loans, and I think the first 22 banks said no. Bank number 23 gave us an SBA loan to cover just the manufacturing costs of those 6,000 units. And so literally everything was on the line. I flew out to QVC a week early. And you know how a lot of times athletes will envision themselves on the podium or landing the triple axel or scoring the touchdown. Like you visualize stuff. I flew out there a week early and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot of QVC, which is in Pennsylvania. And I just started envisioning everything. Like I was trying to pretend I was an athlete. And I was like visualizing everything I could, like the sold out sign coming up across the screen. And here's the moment that became hard. We hired third-party consultants that are amazing at helping people succeed selling on television. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you're going to have any shot at success, you need to use this type of model, which was the same type of model I'd seen in magazines my whole life. You need to do your sell this way. And I would argue with them. I'd say, okay, but that's not why I created the product. And also, like, what if I just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea on national TV so I can prove live the product works? And I would say oh my gosh, if I'm sitting at home and I am 70 years old, or I have hyperpigmentation or this skin challenge or this skin tone or this skin problem, if I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know it's going to work for me? And we would argue, and they wanted us to win. They wanted the best for us. And listen, this is the best advice we can give you. Here's what you need to do. And like, one thing I'll say is, had I realized that if you're ever going to do anything novel or new, or even it's an idea that's been done a million times, but it's your take on it, of course, experts aren't going to think it's going to work, because subconsciously they only think things are going to work that they've already seen proven work, right? And I didn't know that for a long time, and they mean so well, but they're seeing it. But even though a lot of them are visionaries, they're only able to see what you're doing through their own lens of experience. And so anyways, long story short, I didn't have a chance to do it both ways. It was like everything was on the line. And it's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to stick with authenticity in my mission. But then when you're in a moment where everything's on the line and you know you might lose your entire company, it's really hard to just tune in and trust your gut, right? Put your own gut instinct on a pedestal instead of the expert's advice. And I sat in that car for a week and I stared at the front door of the QVC building. And I knew the next time I walked through those doors, I would either walk out bankrupt or with like my whole life changed. And the more I prayed about it, I would sit there in that car, literally crying, trying to like God, take this from me, because it feels so heavy, and just tell me what to do. And it came down to a couple of things. I imagined who my customer was, and I would just kind of imagine who she is watching at home. And for some reason, I kept imagining like a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was like too busy to remember she mattered and remember she's beautiful and that she's enough. And I just remember this moment where I was like, you know what? I would rather, if she's going to bless me with 5 seconds of her precious time, I would rather have her look up on her TV screen and see me showing real women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it. Even if she buys nothing, I'd rather that happen than like me sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was like, I knew what I had to do, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? And when the 10-minute clock started, we went live on the air. And by the way, John, when you probably know this, I didn't know this until I got there. When the 10-minute clock starts, you don't just get 10 minutes for sure. If you're a minute or two in and you're not selling enough, your clock cuts and it jumps down to 2 minutes. And you just like lost 6 minutes. And it's the most stressful thing and most high pressure thing, right? Because they don't mess around. Like you hit sales goals or that's it, which is any business. But so the 10-minute clock goes up. It's like 9:59, 9:58.
How did you get your job? AKA, how did you find yourself doing the work you're doing today?
You know, I always, since the time I was little, Nathan, I always sort of knew I would be an entrepreneur one day. I thought that like I would, save candy that I would get at a holiday. And then I would think, how could I sell this? And so I always kind of had that inkling. But then I actually thought growing up that I would do something totally different. I would sit in my living room and watch Oprah every day as a little girl. And I thought one day I'm gonna share other people's stories with the world. And so, growing up, I kind of had my sights set on that. And I did all kinds of jobs, from waitressing at Denny's to pushing grocery carts in the parking lot and all those things, slicing meat in the deli. And I eventually landed in what I thought was my dream job, which was anchoring television news and sharing people's stories with the world. And like so many entrepreneurs, I had a big problem happen that I couldn't solve. And I kind of had this big aha moment where I was like, oh my gosh, if there's hundreds of companies out there that do this and none of them work for me, like, what if I just try to figure it out? And so, now everyone sees, It Cosmetics, the company that I started in my living room, as this sort of like $1 billion brand. But how it really started was I was thinking I was in one dream job, thinking I would stay there forever on television news. And I learned this big lesson that sometimes knowing when to go after a dream, or I should say when to let go of a dream, matters as much as when to go after one. And I was just, I was anchoring the news every day and live on camera. And I developed a skin condition called rosacea. So for me, like my cheeks, my forehead, my nose, everything would get really, really red and bumpy. And so I started, spending my whole paycheck on makeup products. And I tried everything out there, from the most expensive stuff to the least expensive, and nothing would work. And there was one moment, Nathan, that was sort of the pivotal moment for me, which was, I was live on air, and all of a sudden I hear in my earpiece from the producer, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off. You need to wipe it off. And I'm live over the airways, and I glanced down into my little compact mirror off the side, and I knew what it was. It was that the makeup was kind of breaking up, almost the way, like, if you imagine clay in a desert starts to crack, it was like cracking on my face, and the redness, the bright red skin was coming through. And my producer had no idea what it was. He just thought, like, wipe it off, get it off. And I knew there was nothing I could wipe off. I kept trying to reapply makeup, and it wasn't working. And so this sort of started, what I thought was a season of setback in my life. I thought, like, am I going to get fired? Are viewers changing the channel? Because every single time I would go on the air live, it would happen, right? Because the hot HD lights would start to break up the makeup. And so I would find myself in the same situation. And it was, and then I realized, like, okay, if I can't find anything out there, and there's hundreds of makeup companies, I can't find anything that works for me, there must be so many other people out there that maybe have just given up on makeup or feel like they've never found anything for them. And so, for every person who is a founder or an entrepreneur listening right now, or maybe someone who hasn't taken the leap yet, but they're listening and reading Founder because they know they want to one day, I want to share that, because this is really important. It's easy to see the outcome and the success story, but for a long time, Nathan, I had this idea, like, what if I launch my own company? What if I do it? And my gut told me I was supposed to do it. Like, I couldn't shake that feeling. But for a long time, I didn't do it because my head was sort of talking me out of it. I would think things like, oh, but you're not qualified, and you don't have any money, and you don't have any connections, and you know what I mean? And so many people, I'm sure, have already tried to do it. And if there's nothing that works, what makes you think you can? And just all of those thoughts that we tend to have. And when I look back now, I am so glad I listened to my gut and went for it and took the big chance, even though it was much harder than I could have imagined. Because I think so often in life, our gut's telling us one thing, but then our head is telling us another, and our life comes down to which one we listen to. So.
Yeah, wow. What a crazy story. So can you tell me I'm just curious, how long did you have this idea in your head?
Well, it was a couple of years, because I was just trying to find anything that would work. And one thing that happened that sort of put me over the edge, that I think is really important just to share, especially with anyone out there who, whatever phase they're at in their business or their entrepreneurial journey, is early on, I had a blessing that I look back now and go, thank goodness that happened. And it's really what put me over the edge to really launch this thing and go for it. And, we hear so many amazing thought leaders talk about your why and identifying the why of your business and your brand and your mission. And what I know now, because I've now had the gift of just meeting tens of thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. And a lot of people, I think, they think their why is strong enough, but they haven't actually done the work to peel back the layers and like go deeper and get to the why beneath the why that's so powerful that they can lean on it when the times are super tough and they're tempted to quit. And when I look back at this moment after having this idea for a couple years, one thing that happened so, I guess, serendipitously, or out of sheer grace, I should say, is that, initially I thought like, oh, okay, I can just create a makeup product that if it works for me, it'll probably work for so many other people. So my why could have very easily been like, oh, I'll solve my own problems, but I'll help so many other people too. And I think a why like that is why so many entrepreneurs fail. And here's what I mean by that. Because when we share a why like that with someone else, they're like, that's great. That's so virtuous. That's awesome. And then we think it's enough. We think it's enough if we have a why that's I'm going to help people or this or that. Because, I did want to help people. But what happened, and I want to call this out for anyone listening, because I think this is really important. challenge yourself, whatever you believe your mission or your personal why is for your own company. And this isn't something that has to be part of your mission statement. I'm more talking about as a founder, your personal why for why you're doing what you're doing, or perhaps why you have a big goal that you're working on, is take your why, but then literally go deeper, like peel back the layers and try to go deeper to the deep why beneath the why. And in my case, what happened is I realized, like, at this one moment, and this is what put me over the edge to launch everything, was like, I was like, I don't understand. This makes no sense that there are so many companies. Why do none of them work for me? And then what I realized was like, wait, I've actually never seen a model who has like bright red rosacea selling makeup products, right? And then I started thinking about growing up as a little girl. And what I realized is every time I would see the beauty ads on television or in magazines, like, I loved them. I aspired to, look like them. But at a real deep level, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And I had this big moment where I realized, like, okay, I want to launch products that work, but what if when I launch a beauty company, what if I can actually use real people as models and like all different ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges and call them beautiful and mean it. And what if I could actually like shift the definition of beauty inside the entire industry for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself and every grown person who still does. And it was kind of this huge, crazy idea for someone that was sitting there with no money, no connections, not sure how it was even going to happen. But I got that deep, deep, deep why that was so not just painful, but really meaningful, purposeful for me. And that came early on. And, after I jumped into entrepreneurship and, poured every penny I had into it, I didn't know it would be 3 years before I could even afford to pay myself at all. I didn't know that I would get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's. And I think that as founders, as entrepreneurs, as people with big dreams on our heart, we need like a toolbox of things we can pull from that help us maintain our resiliency. And for me, I think one of those real important tools was really that deep, 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 meaningful why, where I realized, okay, what I'm doing is bigger than myself. It's not just about me, right? And the last thing I'll say to this really quickly, because I think sometimes people think their why has to be some like global, grandiose, thing. Sometimes your why, your deep why, may have nothing to do with your actual company, but your deep why may be like, I'm going to be the first person in generations of my family to break a cycle of poverty or of lack, or I'm going to be the first person that, goes for it and doesn't let self-doubt hold me back in my entire family, right? It could be, there's deep whys, or I want to show my children what it looks like to go after a dream. There's a lot of different whys beneath the why, but I think identifying one of those that really truly hits home is such a key, because being a founder or an entrepreneur at any stage, right? I've kind of seen a lot of different stages, from no money, no one believes in you, you're about to go bankrupt for a few years, to private equity investment and massive growth, to we built to over 1,000 employees. And when we eventually were acquired by L'Oreal, it was our largest acquisition in the US in their history. And then I was part of the largest beauty company in the world as well. So it's kind of like I've seen inside all those, and they all come with their challenges. But I think no matter what phase you're at, having that deep, deep why beneath the why is super, super important to do the work for. It's worth spending the time in, for sure.
What I'd like to do, Jamie, is I'd like to hear about a couple of them that I would call not headliners, meaning we're going to talk more, and I want to hear more about you being rejected. I want you to tell the story about someone being really rude to you and then working for you later on, because I think that's just so much fun. I love that. I want to hear about you getting turned down and then being the dominant product producer on the show that turned you down. I want to hear all that. Your resilience is amazing. But there are some things you did in the early years that are not as public, that were private sacrifices that you made, that Paulo made, that were painful. Could you tell me about one or two of those that don't make the magazine article?
Yeah, so many of those. And thanks for asking about those, and also about rejection. I think that the thing that fills my soul talking about this is I just know there's people that are listening or watching this right now that like feel like they're alone in their rejection, you know, because when we're going through it and we are taking a step of faith and putting our idea out there, or we're leading a team, right? This is the thing I find. I've had the blessing of meeting tens of thousands of entrepreneurs now in my journey. And so many people feel like once they are the boss, or once they are the leader of the team, they're supposed to hide their self-doubt or they're supposed to like be embarrassed about their failures or their rejections, or it's only them. But especially with entrepreneurs that take that step out there, you know, in a world where everything looks good on social media, a lot of people feel alone when it's not working out behind the scenes, or when it doesn't feel behind the scenes like it looks online everywhere. Right. And, you know, you and I were at an event where Albert Tate talked about this idea of being overexposed and underdeveloped. And I've just been obsessed with that idea recently, because I think that this is a really big topic no one's talking about. So many people right now who are entrepreneurs, who are leaders, who are launching their dream, are in this new world where everyone has direct access, direct to consumer, and everyone can be an expert. Everyone can, you know, look like they have a great business. And so many people right now are overexposed, but underdeveloped. And I think that is a big risk. And so, you know, when it comes to the development part, I look at a lot of that as what you're talking about, those early years that a lot of people don't know, those sacrifices that you know, I'm super honored to share, because I know someone out there needs to hear it and know that they are not alone, and it is not all glamorous, and it's not just them. And it's, and I believe, Craig, that no matter how hard or unglamorous the situation, or how big the setback, or how painful the rejection, I believe it is I know it is no indication of your ability to succeed. It's no indication of, is your idea going to work, or is your company going to make it? Because the more conversations like this that I have with friends, and I love that we're having this one publicly on your show, and I've had a lot of these privately with people that have built huge companies. It happens to all of us, right? We go through massive setbacks, massive rejection, massive seasons of people saying your idea is not going to work. You don't have what it takes. I don't see you working in our industry. I don't think there'll be a demand for this. And just knowing that it's just so important. And in the early years of building at Cosmetics, I didn't know these things yet. So I spent a lot of nights crying myself to sleep. You know, early on, we had no money, and I mean, no money, no money. And it was like, we finally, after all the retailers were saying no, right? Because we'd poured every penny we had into creating a product. And I just thought, if you create a product that's amazing, right? And as long as your product is better than what's out there, and I believed our first product was, it's just going to sell. And I just thought that it would, and it didn't. And I sent it out to all of the big beauty stores, the big department stores, and every single one of them said no. And some of them, it wasn't just like no, it was not no for now. It was like no forever, like no. And so, you know, I eventually thought, let's go direct to consumer. And my husband, we couldn't afford to hire anybody. So my husband built our first website. He bought that book, that big yellow book called HTML for Dummies, and figured out how to build our first website. And I've shared this story with you, but when our website finally went live, I thought it was just going to be this massive success. And the day it went live, we got no orders. And the next day, no orders. And this went on for weeks. And I finally, anyone who works with their partner, this is so easy to do, but I'm like, it's broken. You did it wrong. Like, there's no way that this product is so good. There's no way this website's working. We're just getting no orders for this product. There's no way. And then I remember the day our very first order ever came in, and I was like screaming and running around our office, which was our living room. And he says, that was me. I placed that order to prove to you our website's not broken.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh, and this went on for a long time. And, you know, every penny mattered. every penny mattered. I remember, really mattered. And so, and it went into our product and into our mission. And we were teetering on this balance of under $1,000 in our bank account for the company and personal combined for a very long time, which meant that if orders didn't keep coming in, like 2 orders a day, 3 orders a day, we'd be out of business. Mm-hmm. And it was this way for a very long time. And I remember seasons where I would go to the ATM and just like if I needed $20 and I would hit no receipt because like I couldn't even stomach it, like to, you know what I mean? And it was this constant, are we about to go bankrupt for a very long time? And it's tough when in those moments, and then one big thing to share, just in case someone needs to hear this today, when we finally got on QVC and had been on for a little while, which is a long story I can share in a minute if you want me to. But we still, all of our money was tied up in working capital at that point. So we still weren't paying ourselves. We still had no money. And I found out this giant competitor who was also on QVC and all the department stores, they loved the product. They saw we were starting to have some success and some momentum, and they were huge. And I learned that they went to our manufacturer and they paid them off to get our formula. And it was so legally we owned it, right? So, but we couldn't afford to sue anyone or do anything. And I went through this devastating season where I learned they're about to launch this exact duplicate of our formula, of our product on QVC and in all the department stores. They were everywhere. And I was just like gutted and literally physically sick to my stomach. Like, everything we have in our life has gone into this for years. And this product is finally getting momentum. And now this huge competitor is going to swoop in. And by the way, their brand positioning, their DNA of their company is totally different than ours. Like our positioning as our company was clinically proven products, amazing for your skin, real women. And theirs was totally different. And I was like, this product doesn't authentically fit their brand positioning. They just saw this under the radar company getting momentum and thought they can make it big with our product. And I guess that's what happens everywhere in business. But the lesson in this that I don't think I've ever shared on a show, so I just want to share it because I know so many people are in leadership and business listening to this, or so many people with big ideas or worried about people copying them or whatever. I learned the most powerful lesson of authenticity probably my entire life. And this is when we were very small and had no money. And they did knock us off. And then I found out when it's launching on QVC, and I sat there and I watched their launch, right? And there was nothing we could do. And this is what's tough about being small is you have no money to do anything about anything. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's painful because no one wins when you sue anyways. And it's just like, so I worried though, Craig, that they were going to take us out. I worried that they would get credit for this amazing product because we were so small and they were so big. And they launched it on QVC. They launched it everywhere, and it just did okay. It just did okay. Meanwhile, I kept getting booked to go on QVC and sell the same product, right? People didn't know it was the same. I knew it was the same. It had a different package, but it was the same formula. I was going on and we're crushing it. Like, numbers are huge and they are bigger than us, and it's just doing okay. And I was sick to my stomach for months over this until I watched this happen before my eyes. And I learned that lesson that you cannot fake authenticity, that nobody, like, customers are smart and you just can't fake authenticity. And this was a product that, even though it was a great one, was incongruent with their positioning. Mm-hmm. And anyhow, it was a big lesson that I learned. And I remember vowing to myself that one day we would be bigger than that company and they wouldn't even think about doing that to us. And then that happened. And we're the little company in my living room is so much larger than they are today. And one funny thing real quick is, I remember watching, there was a message Joel Osteen did on TV where he talked about the boll weevils, and he talked about how the cotton crops and coffee crops and farmers were devastated and boll weevils were eating them. Anyways, we were so poor, but my husband made me these t-shirts, and he drew an S and a J and a J, like a superhero for Super JJ on the front, and then like a little bull weevil on the back. And I literally wore those shirts to and from QVC under my coat just to try and stay focused. Because Craig, I was in the green room with the competitor that knocked me off and with all the other brands. And I didn't say anything to anybody because it doesn't help. Gossip doesn't help. And being anything other than professional doesn't help. And it was like I was at war. I was at war, but I just knew God was on my side. I knew that I would ultimately win. I knew, I just didn't know how, but it was a really tough season. So when you say, what are some of the scrappy things you did in the beginning? For some reason, those t-shirts just came to mind. And I don't think I've ever shared that story before.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.